Well, thank you everybody for joining our October Dallas-Fort Worth virtual Power Platform user group. And we usually try to meet every month. We took a break last month, but we're happy to be back this month with lots of news and announcements from the Power Platform side of things. And also we have Harold joining us today to share how you can boost up your Power Apps performance. And we hope to have more in-person events. Hopefully next year, we'll see what the group thinks, and we'll plan to do that as well. Now that everything is opening up and everybody's getting in person. Just some quick intros. I am Geeta Sivaselam, and I'm a solutions architect with Artist Consulting. I am a Power Addict, enthusiast of all things Power Platform, Azure, and Office 365. Also a business applications MVP. And then there's my Twitter handle. Feel free to give me a follow. I'm always happy to help when there are questions and if there's interesting stuff that we can work together. And then I also have my colleague, Ben, on the call.
Hello. So my name is Ben McMahon. I'm a principal artist. Been an artist for about 10.5 years. Worked with Geeta. How many years now, Geeta? Are you coming up on 10 as well?
Yeah, 9 years now, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a terrific 9 years. And then just a reminder for everybody, we'll record this and then put it up on our YouTube channel. So it's available to everybody after, and we'll share a link in the group when we get that posted online as well. So I can watch it anytime. We know people have busy schedules and everything like that, so feel free to share with others as well, because we know that Harold's going to have a lot of really good tips here today.
Yep, and I will be dropping in the links for all the things that we're going to talk about today, and also a link to the YouTube channel, so you could go look at other meetups that we've hosted in the past. And there are a bunch of other good tips and tricks, little snippets of videos that we have from our other colleagues that I work with, who are SMEs in the different areas in the platform as well. So if you want to catch up on those. Right, I think we will get started with our agenda here. So we don't have any events per se. There are a couple of events coming up next year. I think right now we just wrapped up Power Platform Conference. There was Dynamics Con Live, and then there's also the North American Collaboration Summit, or the NA Summit, and then of course Ignite. So there's been a lot happening this past month or two back to back. So I think, and now it was conference season, and then I think it's end of the year, so things are taking a step back, but we'll have more events next year, starting 2023. I will be covering all the recent Power Platform news from the conference and as well as from Ignite. There have been several announcements out there, but we've handpicked a few important ones, and then we'll also be sharing links if you want to go ahead and read on all the set of news and announcements that we've been looking at this past month or so. And then we also have Harold with us, who will be talking to us about all the tips and best practices that you need to know when you're working with Canvas apps when it comes to performance. And then if we have time, we usually enjoy having some time kept for open forum where we can have discussions and talk about challenges or pain points, or see how we can help each other out. Here are a couple of announcements here. The very first link over there is the Ignite Book of News. So if you had been keeping up with Ignite, you know that the theme for this year's Ignite was do more with less. So they've been focusing on how organizations can accelerate innovation and digital transformation by leveraging these services that come covering Power Platform, Azure, Windows, name a service in the Microsoft ecosystem. It kind of covers the entire ecosystem. So that's the book of news that covers all of the announcements that have been made. So that's a pretty good read with everything listed out. So we'll be sharing the link out pretty soon. And then there's been some really good updates on the AI Builder side. AI Builder is the low-code version of cognitive services that you can use to implement AI or infuse AI into your processes. So the updates that were announced at Ignite were the built-in feedback loop, which wasn't available previously. And what that really does is you build your models. You're able to use those models to process and extract data But then what if you want to provide feedback to your model saying, hey, this needs to be reprocessed, or you don't see the right confidence score? So that feedback loop is now built in. And then there's also support for unstructured documents that's available. That's GA, which is general availability. And then they have additional language support and multi-page table extraction. That was one of the most commonly asked features from customers wanting to be able to extract multi-page tables. There's tables that you have on multiple pages, and now that is available as well. This next announcement there is a deeper SAP integration. This is in private preview. This was from the Microsoft Power Platform conference. So if any of you or your clients or your organizations are using SAP, this might come in handy. There is right now it's in private preview for a select subset of customers, but the plan is for them to release a set of pre-built Power Apps for the order to cash and procure to pay business processes in a downloadable solution format to be able to integrate with SAP. And for public preview, they're going to extend that to work with 25 other services that come with the SAP integration. And you will also have apps and screens and data attributes all in one screen within the Power App, where you can go and start working with the data and start posting data back to SAP. And in these apps, these users will be able to complete these tasks much faster, and it will leverage your SAP APIs behind the scene. And the intent is for it to be able to use single sign-on to be able to integrate with those APIs and push data back or consume data from SAP. And for GA, the plan is to extend it for 25 of those common SAP business processes. And in order to support all of those 25 different SAP Power App templates that will be provided, there will be corresponding Power Automate flows as well. And these will be pre-built in the SAP integration solution. And these solutions will be utilized and we'll be using the APIs that we talked about, and it will work in any organization's SAP environment, regardless of the SAP version. So this will be a huge win. And that's something, if you want to look at that, we'll drop the link if you want to. And this might be something if you want to try to get into private preview for you to work with your Microsoft account executives. This fourth one over there is another very important ask. I've seen that in the user voice. Everybody has been wanting a native capability for the PDF function. So far, we've been working with workarounds to get that to work the way we want, but we've always wanted an easy way to generate PDFs right from within Power Apps. So what that does is you're able to export contents from the current screen to an object that you can use for your consecutive actions that you would want to do. The PDF function allows you to select a specific screen or a portion of the screen, and you can export it to a PDF object. And it'll also happen on the device that your app is running. So different devices such as desktop or mobile devices will have different capacities when you're generating the PDF. So that's just something to keep in mind. And you can only generate a PDF from content existing on the screen where you've invoked the PDF function. So for example, if you add a PDF function on a screen and then only the content on that screen can be included. You cannot have content from another screen included. So, and then a couple of limitations on that you'd also want to remember when you're using that is that only certain controls are supported, like charts, like Power BI, tiles, maps, and third-party PCF controls are not supported currently. Nested galleries are unsupported. There are certain types of font weights and styles, like bold and italic, may not get translated. Just like how you would expect to see on a PDF. And then you cannot generate fillable PDFs as well as of today. The last four over there, Power Pages is in GA. This was a new product that was announced at Build last year, and it's an external facing website, but on the low-code side that you can use to open it up for external users to join in and access your data and work with your data. And that's GA now. And then we have a couple more announcements. What I have, or we'll get into the details of each of those, which is the cards for Power Apps and innovating AI and managed environments. I have some quick little videos and also some details on each of those announcements. So here's the cards for Power Apps. So think of them as micro apps. It's a new addition to the low-code lineup. It allows your business users and developers to build visually interactive, just like how you're seeing it in the little video there. It's data-driven and they're actionable cards. You're able to embed them as micro apps and can be shared with other people in Teams and Outlook with a customizable visual interface. And now, because it's part of the Power Apps ecosystem, you can add business logic using Power FX. You can integrate with business data through the Power Platform connectors that are available. And using these style of cards, you can quickly build and share rich, actionable apps without much coding or IT experience. And if you look at that little video, you'll notice that how within the Power App Canvas app, they've been able to generate a card, which uses the adaptive card framework behind the scenes. And you're able to copy the link and you're able to go into Teams and paste the link right there. And then as soon as you paste the link, it generates the full blown version of the power card that you're seeing. And you should be able to click on it, interact with it, capture input, and it behaves just like an app. So you're able to perform your actions. There's eventing available. Currently, the support is just they're targeting support for Teams, and eventually we will have that for Outlook as well. Next is co-authoring. This is another important update that is bringing collaboration to center stage when it comes to building applications. This is specifically for model-driven apps. So everyone can see the same version of the app, and they have the ability to edit and remove and add components. They're all working within the screens and within the same version of the app. And it's quite similar to your Office 365 experience where, it's the top right corner, you can see who else is in the app and you can see who else is building. You can chat with them, you can send an email. And right now it's rolling out for makers using the modern app designer. So you should probably see that pop up in your tenants. And this is a big step forward from a software development standpoint. This is a missing feature when it comes to building low-code applications in the Power Platform. So right now, this feature will allow you to have multiple makers and enables them to work collaboratively and build and edit the same app simultaneously. So we'll drop a few links for that if you're interested in trying that out. But this is going to be very helpful, especially when you're wanting to tag people in comments for asynchronous communication and you want to watch each other make changes in real time, or if you want to use that as a way to troubleshoot things as you're building. This would be really handy. This next one is the maker matching in Power Apps. This is integrated with virtual agents, so it's going to assist your makers and guide them in learning content that they need while also connecting them with experienced advisors from within their organization. So it's basically in-context help with a well-connected internal community that you can build, and it will help you rapidly develop solutions at scale. And experienced makers can be nominated as advisors into the advisor program. So that's one way to be someone that can that someone can reach out to as a maker. So it's basically makers and empowering makers. So you see that little video over there. You're able to use the virtual bot while you're within the context of your design studio, and you're able to pull out an advisor and reach out to them and talk to them about a certain issue, or just being able to have a more collaborative way of working and solving challenges as you're learning how to or getting upskilled with the apps. And I think the initial feature support is going to be where you can have admins, configure or assign certain individuals as advisors, and then eventually I think you do have the ability of having a process, an intelligent matching process that runs behind the scenes, which will identify successful makers in the organization and then send them a notification, a nomination notification, where they can opt in to be nominated to be an advisor. So there's more sophistication coming on that end. This next one is one of my favorites. This is innovating with AI and Power Automate. This is quite similar to Power App Ideas, if you're familiar with that. This is the new way to create flows, and it runs on OpenAI Codex. OpenAI Codex is the descendant of GPT-3, which is the framework that was used for Power App Ideas. And you're able to specify how or what you're wanting to, or business problem you're wanting to solve. And you'd let an AI-based co-pilot build that flow for you in seconds. So there are two ways to do it. You either describe it and let AI build it. And then the other option is for you to, while you're building your flow, you have the ability to now format data by providing examples. So you don't have to come up with expressions on the fly. AI will do that for you. Right now, the current support is for Microsoft 365 connectors. That's the set of connectors that this AI Copilot will be supporting in the coming months, and then eventually it will get expanded to include more. And then writing expressions is, not always easy when it gets to working with JSON and formatting data, and it can get daunting at times. So, but now this is going to make it super simple, where you can format data by examples. You see the little screenshot at the bottom. You'll notice that you're able to provide an example of a date, and you're able to provide an example of what the desired format needs to be. And then now AI Copilot will reshape your data based on how you need it. And then when you want to format the text or dates and numbers, that's just one example, but there's several other formatting examples that you can provide, and then it'll generate the expression for you automatically. And so this is going to really speed up how you build apps, and it goes along with the whole motto of rapid delivery of applications when it comes to Power Platform. Next is the managed environments for Power Platform. This was announced to be generally available. While low-code has accelerated organizational capabilities to innovate, it's also introduced new dimensions to enable scaling and managing of applications, especially with everyone adopting the platform. And with so many apps being created, you do want to make sure that they're secure, you're able to scale the solutions, be it data or even from an adoption standpoint, and also ensure governing these technology stacks are intuitive. So this is where managed environments come into play. It makes it easier to govern low-code apps, ensure that they are safe for the entire organization, and with just a few clicks, IT admins can now immediately light up features, which gives you more visibility, more control, and requires less effort to manage all of the low-code assets. So that visual over there is just a little roadmap of what's available today, which includes admin digest, data policy, views, sharing limits, easy activation, and then there's a lot more coming our way by the end of this year. Some quick examples on where this can be beneficial is you can use weekly digest emails that IT admins will no longer have to navigate to the admin center, which is the PPAC, which is called the Power Platform Admin Center, to gain visibility, but the entire experience is going to be automatically configured with just a click of a button to be delivered into their inbox. So now admins can get a bird's eye view of what's happening in their Power Platform usage. And then, we've seen some customers use pro dev and IT-centric tools like Azure DevOps, and, there's GitHub Actions, and then some use a more simpler route of just exporting and importing solutions. But then being able to be at parity with enterprise ALM is something that has been a journey in the Power Platform. We've seen it come a long way. But then, these tools are complex too, so it may not be very intuitive for citizen devs who are not very, who don't come from a professional background. But managed environments will plans to include built-in support for pipelines in Microsoft Power Platform. So you will see ALM automation being included as an in-product feature, and the complexity of ALM will be stripped out. So now IT can, focus more on the governance with lesser effort, and it'll also make it easy on makers to move their solutions from environment to environment using automated pipelines, and also providing better visibility for an audit trail to IT as well. A couple of things to note with managed environments: it cannot be activated on a developer environment, and it does require all users running apps and flows in that environment to have your standalone Power Apps or Power Automate license. So, which means if your organizational tenant already has licenses, which is either the standalone Power Apps or Power Automate licenses, then you're able to take advantage of the managed environments today. If not, you'd have to purchase one to be able to make use of it. All right, I think those were a quick glance at some of the top announcements. There are several others, but I'm going to drop all the links for everybody so you can go and read at leisure. But I'm excited for this next session that Harold has. Harold is a support escalation engineer with Microsoft, and I've had the pleasure of working with him for a client. So anytime you submit a support ticket for Power Apps, it's highly likely that Harold or one of his colleagues are going to pick it up. And he's been working with customers, helping them solve challenges and pain points for a long time. And he's here today to share his expertise and what we should be doing and the do's and don'ts when it comes to building performance Power Apps. And it's all yours, Harold. Can't wait to see what you've got to share.
Okay, thanks, Geeta. Let me share my screen, and I have a presentation here I want to jump on and show you. So I want to talk about, this is going to be like a high level overview of performance and the performance issues we've seen and how we can handle them. And just give you some ideas about what you can do to maybe improve your performance, or what you can do when you run into performance issues, how we might be able to help you. Before I get started, I just want to give you a background of myself. So I've been with Microsoft since the last century here. And primarily when I started supporting Word and PowerPoint, but Office apps. And then I joined Power Platform. It was still a single name called Project Sienna. It was quite a while ago. So I've been involved for a long time, but I'm not a developer. I never claimed to be a developer. I'm just a troubleshooter and try to work out people's problems. I want to talk about Microsoft support a little bit. So our primary objective from my support organization is called break, fix, or reactionary. So this is a situation where you're stuck. You're working on an app and you're stuck, and you're not sure whether this is a bug in Power Apps, or is it some problem with your app or some other factor going on here. So we really focus on breaking and things that are broken more than a how-to, which would be advisory. And when you have an issue where it is a break fix and you come to us for help, before you do that, we need to have certain information. Like repro is great. If you can repro the issue, repro the error, especially in a simple app, that would be really helpful. So many times customers call in, they have very complex apps, and say this one thing is not working right. But it's hard for us to narrow this down to reproduce it because your app is so big. So if you narrow it down, get a smaller app to repro it, then we can determine whether this is is it a bug, a code defect on our side? Is there an outage? Or is this something on the client side, something that you need to fix? And we can oftentimes help you if it is a relatively simple way to fix it. If it's very involved, we need to look at advisory services. When you do call in for help on a support ticket, we like to get a network trace or monitor. So a monitor tool we can talk about a little bit is a tool to capture what's going on with the app, either in the editor, from the studio, or from the player. We always need to get session details. When we engage the product team for help on a Canvas app, we always need to get session details, an app ID, and the version. And we also ask you to check online resources before you make a ticket. So check the community forum, check published documentation. You may find the answer there. And oftentimes when you call for support, we check the forum and online documentation to see if we can find some information there if we're not familiar with your issue. So the other type of case is advisory, which is proactive. And for us to work on it, it's very limited, and it's really best efforts. And we don't do total app building or total flow building. So if you call in and it's an advisory, we can give you so many hours, not very many, a couple hours, and it's really on a best efforts basis. We do have another part of Microsoft which does provide some community advisory services. Really need to have a premier contract with Microsoft, a contract that allows this kind of support. Otherwise, there are a lot of solution providers like Geeta and her organization could probably be a solution provider. to advise on and more advise you how to build something. So talking about performance, there's really two types of performance where we see problems. One is the runtime, and the other is design time. So the runtime could be the user experience, how long it takes for the app to load, to start, how long it takes to pull data in, um, how long it takes to move from screen to screen. These are all from the user's perspective, the latency there. Design time is harder. Design time is more from the developer side. When they start the app, when they try to edit the app, it might be slow editing. They can't add new controls. It takes too long. Or they can't manipulate the expressions because there's some latency. It's not reacting fast enough. And some of the design time issues are too many controls. And loss of intelligence could be too many data sources. So and we have some, I'm going to show you some documentation how to, that will give some tips on optimizing your performance, how to evaluate. But most of the documentation talks about runtime. It doesn't talk about design time. And this is one of the things we're working with the product team to try to get some documentation to acknowledge that design time impact of having too many controls or too many data sources, how it can impact design time. The difference is that an app may perform poorly in design time. When you're editing it, you can't load it, you can't edit, but when you play it, it works okay. And the difference is that when you do it in the studio, when you're editing the app, it has to load so much more. It has to load everything into memory before you can start working with it. In runtime, you have more control about how things are loaded and when things are actually displayed there. So an app may be fine for runtime, even though it exceeds some limitations, but it doesn't work well in design time. The other thing is that could happen is we could have a regression or an outage. So we may have some kind of regression going on where we made a change to Power Apps and it's causes some kind of a latency, some kind of problem. In fact, we're working on an issue right now where GCC, the government cloud, is reporting issues with design time latency. And so there might be something going on here that we're still investigating that. So we have some tools that are available for you to look at, to use to evaluate your app to see what's going on. The one thing I like is a code review tool. This is a solution that's been developed by one of our teams, one of our probably the development teams to help you to really evaluate your app, to look at your app. And I'll give you a demo of that in a few minutes. The monitor is another tool that's still being developed. It's still getting some more development or enhancing the use of it. Right now, the monitor is good for Canvas app, and it can be used in a model-driven app, but we can't get the monitor to work for Canvas app. It's embedded in the Canvas app. It doesn't work well. We can't use the monitor for a SharePoint form, or if it's embedded in any place else into Power BI. The monitor only really works well in the Canvas app in a browser. We are going to introduce, we believe we're going to release the monitor for mobile devices, I think next month. That's a big ask to be able to get monitor traces from an Apple iPad or iPhone or Android device. There's another thing called Azure Application Insights, where you can look at some information about the sessions in Azure to get information about what's going on with the app. And we can actually code into the app some functions that will actually be read by the Azure Insights and give us some more insight into what's going on. One of the problems with performance issues is that sometimes they happen randomly or they don't know where it's going to happen. So using Application Insights to help capture that. And we can then zero back and figure out what's going on there. These are a bunch of links I have here, and I'm going to share some of these links here. This is optimization techniques here. This is an article that talks about just how data works, how you can, some idea about loading data, preloader, refactoring, concurrent call, format optimization, different ideas that you can use to improve performance and understand how it all works. This is another article, very similar considerations for optimized performance in Power Apps. And this one, it's nice because it talks about how data travels in Power Apps. This chart really gives you a good picture about what happens when you make a request, going down different places, and how it comes back. So it's a very useful article to understand how data transfers. And here's it talks about some performance issues. Okay, again, another article, very similar tips and best practices. This one is very interesting because it talks about the limits and data connections and controls. These are both limits on number of controls and the limits on data connections, but they're not hard code. They're not hard. They're not absolute limits. They're suggestions. So we can't say you can't add more than 30 connections per app. But if you do, there could be some repercussions. You can have more than 500 controls in an app, but you need to be aware that you could see some problems with it. I had a case the last week where a customer had 8,000 controls in their app, and they're wondering why they couldn't add more controls without waiting 10 minutes for the control to be added rather than development. So it's more of a development side having too many controls rather than a player, because the app played okay, but they couldn't edit it very well. Adding data connections has 30 connections, and this will include collections. Again, I had a case a couple weeks ago where a customer had about 500 data connections, and he lost IntelliSense. When he was developing the app, he lost IntelliSense because the document server couldn't handle that many connections. We talk about down here, optimize on start. The more you have in the on start, the longer it's going to take for the app to load. We don't want to see people click on an app icon, say start the app, and you have to wait minutes for all the data to be loaded into the on start. So if we optimize the on start property, either move some of this collect, we're talking about doing all these collections here, where you can do a concurrent, which would have them go asynchronously or go in parallel, or you can actually move the collect command expression out of the on start and put it on the screen where it's actually needed. So just move things around so you don't have so much in the on start. We've recently introduced the name formulas. And if we have time at the end, I'll talk about that. But we can put some of this stuff that's in the on start into the formula, the app's formula property, and then that code doesn't actually run until it's actually used. Another advantage to moving things out of the on start. Another thing down here is to avoid control dependency between screens. So it's really common to say you have a gallery on screen 1, and then you have a form on screen 2, and the item property of that form is the gallery 1 that's selected. So you're going across screens. So if you actually on the gallery 1, if you actually made a variable on the selected item and use that variable for the item property, that'll eliminate the dependency. Delegation is a big issue. When you write an expression that's not delegable, you see a little yellow triangle. And that means that the data, the expression has to be, if it's non-delegable, means the expression has to be evaluated in the client. So, and we're limited then to the number of records that can be brought into the client. So the default is 500. You can raise this high to 2,000. So if you've got a non-delegable expression, and you've got, let's say, 10,000 records in your SharePoint list, you may not get the results you're looking for because it's not delegable. Search is a good example. Search is not delegable for SharePoint. So if you're doing a search for SharePoint, all it's going to do is search the first 500, the first 2,000 records. Using delay load, which means you're going to not load all the data, all the screens and controls at once, and you wait till it's actually called. Well, working with large data sets, again, if you bring in 2,000 records and you put that into memory, it's going to affect, based on how much resource you have, it could affect your performance. This is really a problem more for the mobile devices, which may have limited resources. They can't be bogged down with lots of data. I know lots of people say we want to bring in we want to bring in 5,000 records into our Power App. Well, Power Apps by itself can't do it. Natively, we have a limit of 2,000, but you could bring in larger record sets by using a flow, Power Automate flow, and pass that back. We could pass in, let's say, 5,000 into a collection. It'll work, but it could bog down your app because you have so much data there. You want to republish regularly to make sure you've got the most current versions. We want to avoid repeating the same formula multiple times. Delayed output on text controls. These things are all pretty easy to read here. I just advise just reading through these different suggestions here to improve your performance. This is the one I really like to encourage people to use, the code review tool. This was introduced about a year ago, and it's still in development. There's still work being done on it. I'm not sure how much work is being done, but there's still some issues with it. But there's a couple of videos down here in this article. I really encourage you when you go through the article, you want to get the tool, you go through these videos. But the solution for this is it's in GitHub. You just can download the solution. You have the managed and the unmanaged version. Here's the managed version, the unmanaged version. You just can install this solution in any environment. And if you can install a solution, you need to have the permissions to install and use it. Being the environment administrator or the platform administrator, I'm not sure exactly what permissions you need, but you need to have the permissions to be able to install it. You can even put it into a trial environment where you're the administrator, or you can spin up a test tenant and just trial tenant, it's good for 30 days, install it there. So this is what the app looks like. So you would put in here all you do is install you put a name in here and you upload an MSAPP file. Now, if you're in an app, let me just come over here if I could. Okay, let's say I have an app here. This app doesn't have a lot in it, but this takes Power Apps a long time to load. Okay, so if you notice here that I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this. There's two different toolbar settings, and we just introduced a new toolbar setting. This is the modern toolbar setting. But if you open your app, but we also have another toolbar setting. So all of you that have been around for a while, you're probably used to seeing this toolbar setting like this. There's a file over here, and then view here, and actions, and over here you go file, do save as. You save as this computer, and this will create an MSAPP file. It'll download an MSAPP file, which is the actual file of the of the app. If you're using the modern experience, modern toolbar, you come over here, or you come over here, you download a copy here, it does the same thing. You download the MSAPP file. So all you do is download the MSAPP file, and you would then import it into here, and it'll run the review. So the review looks something like this. Now I created this quick app and I just try to break it as much as possible. You see it has a score of 67%. You have different tabs over here. This is the summary over here. So the summary, this gives you an idea of what looks good and what looks bad. So I've got M+1 database is not good, not using the current concurrent, have setting flags, and I have some other things that I've done in here also. You get these ideas here. So now if we come back to this screen up here, this tells you the areas that are failing, and it gives you that little explanation. N+1 database. So N+1 means that you're making too many calls to get too many calls to the data source. And I read a good analogy of this that if let's say you're trying to bake a cake or make cookies or something, and you've got your recipe in the kitchen, but all your pantry is up on the second floor, and you've got your refrigerator in the basement. And as you're reading through the recipe, it says you need to get flour. So you run upstairs to the pantry and get the flour. Then you read the next ingredient says, well, now you need to get baking powder. So you have to run back upstairs to get the baking powder. And you need to get salt. You have to run back upstairs. So now you have to make 3 calls to get these ingredients. So then maybe you have to get eggs, go to the refrigerator. Or you have to get milk, go back to the refrigerator. So if you can combine these and make 1 call to get the flour, the eggs, the flour, the salt, and the baking powder, then you makes things more efficient. Nested search or filter lookup operations. Using something like filter, search, and then all within one expression is really not very efficient. Now, I see people do this all the time. They say filter, and then within the filter, they'll say the search, and they might have another filter within that. It's a lot of work for to try to evaluate all this, and it's just not very efficient. Use of concurrent. It's another way. So if you've got doing multiple things, let's say we saw in the one document in the on start, they're creating 3 collections on the on start, and they're all going sync one by one, so one after the other. But if you do a concurrent, you say let's do it all and we'll do it in parallel, so it makes it again more efficient.
Harold, is this a tool that you use a lot on support
No,
issues?
I don't.
No?
Because I encourage customers to use this tool. It'd be better if customers would use it rather than us use it. It's really designed for users, for customers to use it. I mean, I do use it from time to time, but if customers send the MSAPP file, we can run it for them. But it's really a tool that should be used by you to evaluate your app before you call us, or help. Or if you run a tool and you need help understanding what some of these things are, we can help you with that also.
Gonna say, Harold, the was a couple of times I used the tool. It did make me feel very sad looking at all all the things that it
Yeah.
points out. It's so detailed. It points out everything that you're missing, right? But
Oh yeah.
yeah, and so like, oh no, it makes you feel like, it makes you realize things that you don't do intentionally, but little things that can get unnoticed. And sometimes I've also noticed that certain call outs may not be applicable to your use case, and you could totally ignore them, or
Right.
change the status on those. But it's been very helpful in also keeping up with changes that are happening and updates that are coming our way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like accessibility. I mean, it's not a performance issue, but it is a, and I'm not sure how important it is to your situation, but they always pull us out. My apps always fail on accessibility because I don't really code for it. So, um, but it is something, if you can make, if your app's going to be in the environment, in your organization, you should be aware of accessibility issues. Another big one is that I always look at the starts with versus end. Starts with is really preferred rather than the end operator. And it is not delegable in many cases, where it starts with is much better performance. Nested filters within lookup. So again, nesting the API calls within each other. Another thing that happens often is the using first filter. First, like right here, lookup versus first filter. When you do first filter, the filter has to first get all the records that are to be filtered based on your filter expression, and then find the first one. But if you do a lookup, lookup will find the first record that matches the criteria and return that. So lookup is much more efficient than first filter, especially with larger data sets. I think what else I here. These are the basic things to look at. Now, some of the other things that come up here, which is really handy in this tool. This gives you an idea of the app checker results. This shows you some possible things they need to correct here. There's not much here other than accessibility, but there's not much here because this app is really small, not doing a whole lot. This report here, this part is really handy because if you got an app that's really slow in editing, looking at the number of controls is really key here. We've got hundreds of controls here. You can guess that there's going to be some problems with latency. These are some of the settings you may want to consider changing, playing around with. So there's all these settings. These are all these settings that can be app settings. You may want to turn on and off to see how that changes your performance. This one is a really useful one. This is a code viewer. So here you can actually see your code for different controls. You can do a search here. So I'll do a filter. You spell it right. This will give me all the expressions that use filter. And the way I like to use this, I can look at here and say, well, this is a problem here. I can hit my app in the studio right next to here and make some changes out to see what that does. So you can actually use this and then use the screen and use your screen on the side to kind of compare and kind of make some changes where it's necessary. Also, on one of these screens, I can't remember which one it is, or this one. So on this screen, you can actually print out the report. You click on this button here, and it will should generate an email with the report in there using the print function, using some kind of function they have in there. This is a really, if you look at the solution, all the pieces to it, it's really complex. I don't understand most of the solution they have here. There's so many custom API calls and some DLLs they've created. Just a lot to the solution that it's way beyond me. So the other thing I mentioned is that if you load an app in here that's really large, like I had an app that was 8 megabytes, actually 16 megabytes, because it has so many images, embedded images in it, that we couldn't, 10 megabytes the limit. So we took out all the images. I went through the the code, source code, Visual Studio, and I removed all the images. I got it down to 8 megabytes, but still the app couldn't load it because there's just too many controls. So I had to go for overnight, always processing. So if the code review tool can't process your app, it's a good sign that there's something wrong with it. And I say this also, that if you run into an issue where you've got a problem because there's latency, because there's too many controls, or there's too many data sources, there's not a lot we can do from our side, from Microsoft. We don't have an escalation path for that kind of an issue. We can advise you to reduce some controls, maybe split your app up into smaller apps and link them together. But there's no way we can overcome these limitations. If your app doesn't work right because you have too many controls, there's nothing the product team can do about that. Just you have too many controls. I want to go back to this other app for a minute. So back to this app again. So this app, I just want to take a look at this app. So in this app, it's a really simple app. I'm just working on for somebody else. But we have a tool here, the monitor tool. I don't remember these buttons, so wait a minute. Okay. So here in the monitor tool, I can actually see what the call was. I get a idea, clear collect. And I can look over here what my formula was and what the results are. So it's collected 0 records. But you actually look at the monitor tool, we can actually see the performance. You can see some information about the calls that are being made, get rows here. See that we can see the response here. So you get all this information here. And then we can also, if you need to call a support ticket because your app's not working right or some problem with your app, you can actually download a copy of this monitor trace, and you can send it to us, and we can then load it. Because I can then upload it. It's the same thing I just did here. I can actually upload it, and we can then use this to evaluate what's going on, get some ideas what's going on. The other thing that's interesting in the monitor tool is you have a duration. So if your data is loading slowly, you're not getting data quick enough, you can see in here how long does it take. So if it only take 83 milliseconds, that's not a problem. But if it's taking 3,000 milliseconds, then you know there's a problem with either a problem with your data query or the network. Some other problems there we need to look at. But it's a good clue, good way to evaluate where the hang up is, where the duration, where the latency is happening. So the monitor tool is a really handy tool to use for troubleshooting your app. So when we see in here a duration is a long time, going doing get records here. Let's see, we get rows. And it's taking not 83 milliseconds, but taking 2 minutes. We have to really look at what's happening in your network. Is this especially if it's more of it's an on-premise, if you're using SharePoint on-premise or SQL on-premise, we have to go through a gateway. We could have a problem on the gateway. We could have a problem on the internal network structure architecture, where there's some switch or some place, some stop along the network was being hung up. Or if it's SQL, it could be something on SQL itself. If you're doing some kind of complex query or you're going to store a procedure on SQL, it's taking too long and may time out. We need to really look at the SQL, what's going on in SQL. So this will give you a good clue to where to look. And if I see some kind of long times here, I always like to have people take this code, take what you're doing out of this app, make a copy of your app or create a new app, and just add a connection to it and see if you're getting the same performance in a new app. Is this something in your app causing this, or is it something with the connection or what you're trying to call from the data source? So test, I always like to test other apps, narrow it down, and see if we can reproduce it in another app. I also, if you're doing a get rows and it's taking a long time, I might want to go to a Power Automate and do a quick flow, do a manual flow and do get rows and see how long it takes there doing a similar type of query. Again, we can say whether this is an app or is just something outside the app that's causing this. Okay. So this is a link to the Azure Analyze Telemetry and Canvas app using application insights. You need to have an Azure account. You can just create, this is a good article how to create it. And down here they talk about create custom trace events. So you have to put in the code, use a trace function. You can put this in the code. We can then capture some of this information during the runtime. And then we can read it in the Azure Insights because it may be something we can't reproduce. It only reproduces randomly by certain users or some place, whatever. So we can capture this event in the application insights and then kind of look at this and see what's going on there. This explains how to set it up. It's pretty easy. I put a couple of links in here about N1 database and understanding N1. It's not just a Power Apps thing. It's really a well-known situation, and it's applicable to many other areas. So just put a couple of links in here just to give us some information about this, because it's a pretty common thing having N1 type situations. I wanted to just touch on a couple of new things that came out through Power Apps and Power FX. Name formulas. It's pretty interesting. So there's a link here. So we're introducing name formula, and name formula says, let's take this out of the start application app start on start and put this into the name formulas, into the formulas property of the app. And what this does is it creates a variable which is available in the app, but it's not run until you actually use it. So it's a very handy tool, and I think it's going to improve performance if you take things out of the on start. The more you get out of the on start and put it into other places, either in the on visible of a screen or in the formula bar, in the formula button, it's going to make your app be more efficient, run better. The other thing I want to mention here is index. So in the past, when we had an array or a collection, there's no easy way to get a specific element. So in other programming languages, you can have an array, you can say an array, you have a square bracket and say, what is the element number I want to get? You say array with a square bracket 3, and I get the third element. The fourth element is 0 based. And in Power Automate, you can do the same thing. We have expressions in an array, you reference a specific element. But Power Apps didn't have that. So Power Apps, you would use first, or we say first n, which would be the first so many, first 10. But then we say first to the last, first n. You say last. Then we want the first n, we say 3, and then we get the third element. So we've introduced the index feature function, which allows you to specify a specific record, a specific element. So here, the example here is they're showing here we got first n and last n, which is the first number of records and the last number of records. Here we can say index table and an index number. So index table, we say 3, we get the third element. Here's a good example down here of how to do this. This is a little bit more efficient than doing last, first in. Because again, we don't have to bring in 10 records to get the third one. 10 records to the 10th one. Something that's coming up, it's not it's still it's in preview, but it's the formula repair and power apps. So I don't know if you're familiar with Excel. Sometimes in Excel you create a function, a formula, and it'll tells you an error and gives you an idea of how to fix it. I know I've seen this many times. Circular references. I hate that. You create a formula in Excel, and it'll say circular reference. You know, say how to fix it. Well, they're bringing this into Power Apps. So you say if you have a formula and the app recognizes if there's an error in your syntax, maybe using a double quote, which is using a single quote, or a single quote, which is using a double quote, it'll tell you there's an error and tell you how to fix it. Because right now, if you have you're missing a parentheses, it happens all the time. You're missing a parentheses. It's really hard to, just have an error. It's give some kind of obscure error, expecting this but getting that. But it's not really telling you where the error is. So hopefully, with the repair formula, enable formula repair, it'd be more specific and help you to repair your syntax a little easier. So this is, it just came out, and I'm not sure where it's at right now. It's still in preview, but it's going to be happening. It just came out last month, so it's going to be happening, and we see more of this. So that's pretty much what I want to talk about. I'm opening up for questions now. If anybody has questions, I'll be glad to answer what I can, or comments.
Thank you, Harold. This was very insightful, especially the code review tool. I think there are some things that you can't do in the app today. Like, for example, in the designer canvas, you don't have a way to tell how many controls you have on your screens. But with this, you're able to go and tell each screen how many controls. It'll give you an idea of if you're exceeding the limit, if something's going, having a performance lag, you're able to figure that out.
Absolutely. Yeah, good point. And like I say, this is really something y'all should be using if you're doing a lot of development. There's still work to be done. There's still bugs in it, but it's a good tool that for most apps will really help you out. So I really encourage you to install it and check it out with your apps. I have another comment I want to make about going back to what you said at the beginning about the co-authoring. Canvas apps does co-authoring also. You have the Git control. So it's an optional control you can add. It's still in preview, but you can hook your app to GitHub or to Azure DevOps, and you can actually co-author and see changes there. So this is something that, like I said, it's in preview, but it does work. So it's something you might want, if you're doing co-authoring with other people, something you want to take advantage. There are some limitations. Once you've added it, it's hard to take it away.
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, that's something I need to try. I think I haven't tried that at an instance yet, but played around with it, but not tried it on a real production, dev scenario for a client yet. But yeah, I think that especially when you have multiple developers working or makers working on the same app, maybe focusing on different screens, you're still able to have that collaborative effort of working together on different components.
I had the customer using it, but they wanted to export their app. I mean, they exported the app, the Git control went with it, and then it messed things up. They couldn't get rid of the Git control.
Oh, when they exported and imported?
Yeah,
It
was referencing the wrong thing, and they couldn't get rid of it. They could if you remove it, it gives you the option to remove it, but then it just comes right back.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what happens when you have to expect this with it being in preview.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't tried that in any.
Don't do it in production.
Yeah.
Don't do it in production yet. It's still in preview, but still, it's something that's being asked for because we have lots of people that co-author, work together, and they always have to close the app, let the other person open it, and then you get the override, there's lock through editing. So there's a problem
Yeah.
when you're co-working with somebody. So that's a good feature to come along.
Yeah, I didn't know about the formula repair piece. I need to follow up on that was
Yeah,
a pretty cool thing where it would, give you suggestions on if you have errors and fix it for you. And that might be
absolutely.
something that I should try turning on. It seems like it's a preview feature, but a lot of times you have this whole event maybe on an on select button. Let's say you have this whole big chunks of flower effects that you have, and you're trying to figure out where is that red squiggly line.
Right.
And where did I make that mistake? Why is it giving me that little red warning? And then this might speed it up for
Okay.
us.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. So yes, the solution checker. I mean, the app checker is not very helpful either because it just touches the error on this page or on this function, but doesn't really tell you how to fix it or what the error is. So hopefully
Yeah.
that'll be better. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of preview features they're coming out with, and it's hard to know when they're becoming like the name formulas. This is
Yeah.
still preview, but it's still useful. There's still work to be done there. I can't wait till they allow you to put collections in there.
Yeah, is that similar to like user-defined functions? Like, how I know Nintex used to have that, where you could generate a little UDF, it used to be called,
Uh-huh.
like little user-defined function, and just reuse that across. So it's a little component of an expression that you just can continue to use
Yeah,
across your
yeah.
implementations. It sounds like it's
It
similar to
could be
that.
something. I think it's more like constants. You
Yeah.
create a value here, and you can't change it. It can't be changed
Yeah.
to continue to run it. So I looked at an app yesterday. Somebody had. They have two combo boxes on two different forms or two galleries, whatever it was. But each combo box, they type the items property as an array. They just typed as an array. They hard coded it, and they use the same array in the other combo box. They're connected, and so it's really hard to manage that. If you
Hmm.
change the value there, you have to go through both of them and make sure they're
Yeah.
right. But if they use a named formula there, they put that the thing in there, they put that array into the name formula, then you use that value in the combo box as the items property, and it doesn't impede the startup because the the name formula is not actually created until you actually use it in the combo box.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so it has some really handy. But I was trying to use it for using a table. I have a static Excel table I use on an app. I want
Hmm.
to pull in some values to check whether the user is a member of this list here. It's in the
Yeah.
startup right now, but I couldn't get it to be in the name formulas because it won't support
Um,
the lookup yet. So
Lookups yet.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
it's, it's
that
not
makes sense.
not
Yeah.
there yet, but hopefully in time it'll get there.
Yep.
I
Anyone else have?
like the fact that those name formulas, they don't care about order either. So you could like put any statement you want in which order.
Yeah,
And
absolutely right. You're
yeah,
right.
it's nice.
Yeah, that's right. One thing to remember though, you have to terminate with a semicolon.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
So in
Yeah.
Power Apps itself, you don't need to use a semicolon to terminate a line.
Yeah.
But in name formulas you do. Because I couldn't figure out when I was first starting this, I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. I kept getting errors on my formulas. So I realized I had to terminate with a semicolon, in the line of semicolon.
Um,
So Philip, you've used the name formulas then.
Oh, I've been using them more and more in uh, my new applications that I'm building. Also moving over from global variables over to name formulas as it's needed. So
Right.
I like
That's
the way
perfect.
it's immutable
Yeah.
and like it's a universal and instantaneous changes. So you don't have to like redeclare whatever
Right.
variable you're doing. So yeah, it's pretty dang useful.
yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, good. I'm glad you're using it.
Superset to global variables.
Yes. Global variables are risky, as always. All right.
We have a question. Gulshan, feel free to unmute and ask, talk about it. So he says it's is there an issue with the audio auto start on app start? Works fine in preview, but not up. Yeah, that's all right. I'll read it out for everyone. Works fine in preview, but not when app is run. Tried with auto start being true. Tried starting with variable on start of an app also. Oh, it doesn't work. I have not tried that.
Do you have
wanna
a
try
you have
that?
audio file that you want to play when the app starts? Who's the person in green?
Yeah,
How you pronounce it?
yeah.
Oh,
I
it's
think he
Passman.
has
There
an
we
audio file that
go.
he wants
Okay.
to. Yeah, it sounds like he said yes to your
Well, I would
question,
think
Aaron.
Invisible would be a better place to have that on the screen. On whoever that audio player is, I would think Invisible would be a place to have it. Because you wouldn't want it to be on the auto start, on the app start. But I don't know, I've never tried that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, have you tried it on different browsers? Like, just try a different browser, Chrome versus Edge. Not sure if it's going to behave differently, but just wondering if it's just something to do with the. Oh, okay. So all three browsers,
Yeah.
same.
Run it on a monitor session. See what happens.
Yes.
Yeah, something we've learned today. So yeah,
Yeah, the monitor work.
it's
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 interesting.
almost like it can't trigger the event, right? To auto start, it's not detecting that. Even though it's set to true, it's just not detecting it.
Yeah, so the timer, yeah, timer, it says timer doesn't work either. Because you auto start the timer. Now the timer end would be placed, but it works fine in preview. Hmm.
Yeah, I'll have to try that out. Haven't seen that. There's one more question from Chaitali, Harold. Oh, it's not related to performance, but there's one issue I'm facing while importing Canvas app with flow from one environment to another environment. Flow owner and app importer can run flow, but other users are unable to run flow. Any solution for this situation? Can't give user flow ownership.
So if you're triggering it, what I would do if I was triggering a flow from Power Apps, I would use the V2 Power Apps connector, and then you can configure the flow connections to use run as. So you can run it because the problem is with when Power Apps triggers a flow, the flow runs in the context of the user of the app. So you can configure the flow to use run as, and then run as the owner of the flow. That may get around this. I've done this from other places and it's worked.
Is this a Power App triggered flow, Chaitali? Is that, or is it
Yeah,
just?
this is Power App triggered flow.
Yeah.
So there's no solution.
So I have had, but it was not a Power App triggered flow. It was just a regular triggered
Flow.
from an event. Yeah, and for that there is a role that you will have to assign for the users or whoever has access to that app. If it's a security role, I don't know if you're using security roles in your solution. So there is a specific role. I think it's called process something. I don't remember exactly what it, but you'll have to go into Dataverse, choose so there's a backend table that it uses to track, audit trail of who's accessing the flows, who's triggering flows, and all of the good config stuff. But we had to assign that role or enable that privilege for all of those users in the security role and assign that security role to users, and then everybody was able to use the flow.
Yeah.
So it's in the Dataverse.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't have, yeah. So it's just the users will probably have basic user rights, right, in the environment. I don't know if you're using, but if your solution has a security role that you added a custom security role, then you could just enable, the privilege for process on it. But if not, then you should be able to just assign that to the group that has access to the app.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try. Thank you, Geeta.
So is your app and flow in a solution or are they independent?
Mhm.
I forgot how you pronounce your first name. Chitalia? Tali?
Yeah,
Is your flow in the app, are they part of a solution or are they are you just exporting the app by
they're
itself?
just using the app.
They're not using a solution. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure if that will work then, Keith, what you're suggesting.
So if they're in the it doesn't have so it doesn't have to be a security role. They would just have to go to the user in the database environment and then just assign that privilege for that user. Whoever
Okay.
needs to be running the
If they're using Dataverse.
I'll try that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on what to do. Yeah.
It'll just be part of the user profile in Dataverse. So even if it's not part of the solution, you just go to the user profile and look manage roles, and then you could create your own custom role if you want, or you could just assign that privilege for that user as
Okay.
part of yeah.
Thank you.
Look for process. I think that's what it is. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I'm trying to find the exact name,
Process.
but I know it's called
Yeah.
process.
Geetha,
Yeah, if I find it, I'll paste that.
could this be related at all to environmental differences? So maybe a policy in one environment, not in another environment? As an example. So, because he's going from one environment to another environment. So do the environments have the same type of governance around them or different? And that could be posing an issue with users being able to do something.
I think about like DLP policy. Or
As an
something.
example, yeah, just,
Just
I mean, are because it's going from one environment to another. So are there any setup or configuration in the environments that could be causing a problem here?
The policy would block the flow in the app for anybody. So
Yeah, because she's saying
say the owner of the flow can run
other
it.
users are unable to even run the flow.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that would,
some one environment they can run the flow, but when I'm changing the environment, importing it into another environment, like the test environment or the prod environment, they can't run the flow.
Doesn't trigger at all, is what you're saying.
It's showing that not enough security, not enough privileges you have.
Yeah,
So
that's the error that I've seen too, when it says not enough security privileges and it's that specific privilege you should enable for that user in Dataverse, which is process. Yeah. If I find the exact role name, privilege, the name of it, I'll drop it in the chat.
yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a while I'm fighting with this course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not something that it's. I don't think it's like documented. It just seems to be something very specific to the environment. I've seen this happen with another client, and we had to just enable that privilege, and then everybody can run flows as long as they have access to the app.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. Exactly what you were saying, Geetha, was security roles in Dataverse. So if you're switching over to different environment, it's usually because they don't have correct privileges to that environment. And I know specifically when I was, what I like to do is only give basic user role to everyone by default. And I believe one of the privileges is processes. I think if you give them the process access, then they could run flows in that environment.
I'll find it now. Thank you so much, Philip.
You'll have to just add I think you may need to be an admin.
Yeah, I have to ask the admin to do that. I don't have admin
They
access.
could enable that for the, like he's saying, for the basic user access. I thought it was
Right.
process, but he's right. It's processes. Yeah.
Processes. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see that. Thank you so much.
Anyone else have any questions, thoughts, or any other features that you've enjoyed using?
All the new features, they're awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are. Yep. Anyone here use AI Builder in your solutions?
I'm starting to build an AI model, specifically because finance, they want to start bringing in like disparate receipts and accounting stuff like bills and whatnot from different companies. So I'm starting to build a model for that, and it's surprisingly accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It does do a pretty good job of giving you a very intuitive step-by-step walkthrough of how you can set up the model, train it,
Yeah.
and then
Mm-hmm.
being able to see like the
Trying
confidence.
that with the regular OCR. I mean, we were like, nope, that's not going to work. But once I saw that through AI Builder,
Yeah.
it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it does a pretty good job, and they've covered several scenarios now. I mean, starting from structured to semi-structured documents to unstructured. It does do a pretty good job of doing that. I think the only thing we've noticed that just depending on the scale, the pricing may not be affordable, depending on the volume of documents you're wanting to process.
Right. Yeah, that's under the consumption-based Azure services, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's an extra cost because Microsoft's hosting the infrastructure too when it comes to AI Builder.
Yeah, makes sense. It's a lot of processing on there. And
yeah, but it's more like a give and take. Like you don't have to be a pro dev to know how to do things, and here's the low code version. And with a couple of clicks, you have a functioning model, and you're able to just start infusing AI with ease.
Absolutely. For low code to have access to that kind of power is pretty cool.
Yep.
I don't know if I didn't catch it or not, but did you talk about untyped objects via the parse JSON, the new parse JSON?
No,
Matt?
I have not. Would you like to share about it? How you're using it?
Yeah, I use it, and you have to strong type it, right? Like you have to cast type your variables as you're parsing the JSON that's coming in. I wish it was a little bit more intuitive. I don't know. I've just barely started using that as a possibility because whatchamacallit, bringing in a response from Flow.
Will tell you, okay?
Bringing in a response from Flow would be easier if I could just always pass in a string, right?
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
constructing an array to get a response back. Because that response connector in Flow is sometimes a little really picky, right? If you don't nail the schema down,
it doesn't work well. Yeah,
it like complains.
Returns true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then
So
also
like
just with
I was like, oh wow, I could just replace everything with just a string and then parse it on the Power Apps side. But I don't know, it's still there's still more work to be done on that side.
Yep. Yeah. And on the other
Very
side,
interesting.
I also hope that they'd increase the timeout on that call, because I think right now it'd have to be within 2 minutes. If you're sending a response from Flow to Power App, it'll have to be within.
I wish there was some asynchronous way to respond, right? Like if there was some sort of like interrupt that Power Apps could be like a built-in webhook, right? That would be so super useful.
Users would complain they're waiting too long. You have to balance that. Because you just say, I don't
That's
want to
right.
wait 4 minutes to move on.
If you have
Yeah.
like, let's say that you have like a big table, right? Because right now, one of the problems I have for speed is collecting all of the employees' authentication methods, right? So they use their phone number stored in AD via the authentication methods, and Graph API, there's no way to do that en masse. So you have to call the API for every single employee, right? To
Mhm.
grab their auth method number.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I have to match that with all the employees. And that I've got it down like up to like 2,000 employees. All employees, I get it in at around 2.5 minutes, right there at the limit.
I think that's the thing. Yeah, we've been having to get very creative with how you do it, right? Like try and filter it on the front end, maybe only do on-demand calls. So you're always trying to restrict the data that you're bringing in. But yeah, but there are, I can see
That's
like
bad
there's
if there was
scenarios.
if there was
There's
a
scenarios where you want to
synchronous
get the whole
way,
thing. Yep.
yeah, to know when that processing's done and then refresh the data source. That would be super cool.
Mhm. Yeah.
This is something to add to the ideas form, feedback form.
Yeah.
Share this with the product team using the ideas form.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, I will do that.
Because they look at that. They to prioritize their development based on number of votes or the number of people that are responding to an idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, but I know we're at time. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harold, for taking the
You're
time
welcome.
to share with us. This has been very helpful, and we look forward to checking out all of those new tips and announcements that you shared with us about using strong, the formula repair and using named functions. And I think all of this is going to help us as makers, make it much more easier on us to speed up our app making time. And for the rest of you on the call and those who had to drop off, thank you everybody for joining us and always supporting us as always. We hope to see you again next month. Then if you have any feedback for any content or that you would like to see, we're happy to find a way to bring that over to you guys. And if any of you would like to present at the UG, we're very happy to have you present as well. And if you are not a member of the user group, I'm sharing a link over there and there's a QR code. So if you want to scan that, we should be able to get you in. But thank you, everyone. And thanks to Goshen, too. He's been joining us at midnight. So thanks for staying awake for us. But we hope to see you all again next month. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.